Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Abhi. I'm here with Beth. We're both LSAT Demon tutors and teachers. And today we're just going to talk about a student question that came in via the Ask button. I am someone who struggles with time, and I'm not the quickest reader. If I know, I'm going to have to skip at least a couple questions on the LR section. Would it be a good strategy to skip parallel question types? So she means parallel reasoning questions, just because they typically require more reading. What do you think, Beth? Skip questions? Skip questions because they're hard?
Skip questions because they're hard. I mean, my gut reaction is, no, stop. Do not do that. It takes, I don't know where this asker is in their studying process and what point or where their score is or anything like that, or even what they're reaching for. But my initial reaction, no matter where you are in your scores or how close you are to your goal score or your LSAT potential, do not skip certain question types. Every single LR question is testing the exact same thing, which is primarily reading comprehension. And then beyond that, it's like understanding flawed arguments is happening in almost every LR question. Beyond that, no, I mean, even if something doesn't have a conclusion, and it's just a supported or a must be true, that's still testing reading comprehension. So reading comprehension is happening with every question. And my other gut reaction to this is, if you're going to skip it now at this point in your studying, at what point are you planning to come back and get better at these? Now is actually the time, as you're still studying, to learn these questions and to learn how to attack them and do them efficiently, and you will get better at them. What do you think, Abhi? What are your initial reactions?
I completely agree. I mean, I was over here nodding like a maniac, and that's. I mean, Beth, you hit the nail on the head. The questions you're struggling with are the ones you should be doing. Mm-hmm. If you're going to sit down and take a time section or a time test, and you're going to skip the ones that give you pause or skip the ones that you know you struggle with, you're not actually helping yourself in your prep, right? I actually had a question about this. I just remembered that a student raised this question in class as well. She was like, I struggle with, for instance, finding the flaw. And like you were mentioning reading comprehension, just to be clear, like reading comprehension on LR just means literally reading the words on the page, understanding them, picking out the flaw, and like kind of engaging in those processes. And the student was like, I've been struggling with finding the flaw. So I've kind of been falling back on like the techniques or the buzzwords and looking for certain buzzwords. And I was like, well, instead of doing that, I think you should just slow down and find the flaw, because you're practicing skills that are going to actually help you learn the answers to the test. So I agree, Beth, to this right. Thank you for writing in, Anonymous. But I think instead of skipping the ones that you're struggling with, double down and actually sit down and try to understand the ones you're struggling with, because those are the ones that you're going to have to end up getting right eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing about skipping question types and asking about this strategy is, I would say you're kind of breaking an LSAT Demon commandment. We don't read the question. Question first.
How do you know? How do you know? Yeah, how do you know it's parallel reasoning? You've already done a bunch of the work if you're to the point where you figured out that this is this type of question.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are at the point where you're reading the question, you're going, oh no, this is a parallel, I want to skip it, I would really, really encourage you to stop doing questions that way. It might be hard to practice that self-control right now, but in the long run, it'll serve you really, really well. And one of the things you can do with that, if you're, you are studying with the Demon, you can use, when you're drilling, you can use the Demon's prediction mode, and it'll hide the question. So I love that feature because self-control is not my forte. So if that is helpful to you, so the question is hidden, do that and use that so that you can practice how you're going to play on your time sections and on full-length tests as well. The other thing, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say 100% agree. And Anonymous, like what we're saying here, to clarify, because you're a basic user, so maybe you haven't been around for very long, but what we're saying is when you read the argument first, and when we say the argument, we mean the little blurb on the left-hand side. So if you're in prediction mode, the entire right-hand side is going to be blurred out. You're only going to see the argument, the words on the page on the left-hand side. When you read those first, we're kind of forcing you or encouraging you to engage with the words on the page and actually figure out what's going on, what the author's saying, what the speaker is saying, if it's a speaker. And then they're going to say some nonsense, and that's the flaw. And you're going to go into the question going, I already know what this question's about. And so that's what we're talking about there, which is, hey, try prediction mode, read the argument, engage with it first, and then you're going to be so well prepared to jump into the question.
Yeah. And on that too, I've heard this question or a question just like it many, many times. People really dislike parallel questions, whether it's parallel flaw or they don't tell you it's flawed. It still might be flawed, even if they don't say flaw. Mm-hmm. People really hate these question types, but I would push back on that a little bit and say understanding these questions is going to help you with every single question that you encounter on 100%. LR. Because just like Abhi was just talking about, your job is to understand the passage in front of you, find out what's wrong with it, if there is something wrong with it. And a flawed argument, what we mean by that is if there is a conclusion, there's going to be premises that maybe support it. A flawed argument is a conclusion that's not proven 100%. So even if it's, at 98% or something, if there's a hole, it's still a flawed argument. So that's your job to understand it. And that's why all the time I like to talk about in classes how you could answer so many questions about a passage. Sometimes I like to make predictions for like a weakened question or a strengthened question or a necessary assumption or a sufficient assumption just to show how many things we could do. It's actually not about the question, right? It's all about understanding what's going on with the passage. So if you're putting in that work, answering a parallel question can actually end up being sort of like a must be true. What did the argument do?
Right, exactly. You're matching the flaw. You if you identify the flaw correctly and you say, okay, like, oh, they confuse sufficient for necessary. That that's the flaw they made. Then all you're doing is looking through the 5 answer choices and looking for the answer choice that confuses sufficient for necessary. It is kind of a must be true at that point. So not only are you, like Beth just said, not only are you flexing your find the flaw muscles, but you're also just making your own life easier and actually making parallel reasoning questions quite trivial.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you go about eliminating wrong answer choices? I feel like that is sort of a really valuable thing here because the asker also asked about this requiring more reading. So what do you think about it requiring more reading in the answer choices?
Absolutely. So the gripe with parallel reasoning, as you guys have probably heard in class, is when people have a problem with parallel reasoning or parallel flaw or whatever, they're just annoyed that they have to read 5 argument-sized answer choices. That's the problem, right? That's what slows people down. They think, oh, I have to do 5 times the reading on these questions than I do on other questions. And Beth and I would challenge that. We would say, if you've done the work, if you've practiced with prediction mode, if you've really built that self-discipline to only read the argument first, you've identified the flaw, then all you're looking for in the answer choices is that flaw or is that parallel reasoning, right? So you could get 3 words into an answer choice. And Ben and Nathan mention this all the time, right? Be confident, be quick to eliminate answers, right? You get 3 words into an answer choice and it says the wrong thing, or it makes the wrong flaw, or it goes in the wrong direction. It has a different modifier. It adds instead of subtracts or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
As soon as it goes wrong, you can confidently eliminate it and you are not reading the rest of that answer choice. So it's maybe not as much reading as you think. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. If you're the answer choices are not your friend, and you can aggressively get rid of them. If you understand what you're looking for, you can aggressively get rid of the answer choices.
Absolutely. We talk about, and all of us talk about this in our LR classes, but we set that bar so high for the right answer that we can be, like Betzer said, we're aggressive about eliminating the wrong ones because 80% of them are wrong. We know that 4 out of 5 of them suck. So we're not going to give them any grace, and we're going to be kind of mean to them. And as soon as they mention one thing that we don't like, we're going to say, nope, you're gone. And usually you're going to be left with one answer choice that meets that really, really high bar. We got through the whole thing and we couldn't say, we couldn't dismiss it for any good reason. And oftentimes that's going to be your answer.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I like to talk about all the time too and remind people there are 2 ways to reach a right answer. One is to predict it and to immediately spot it, right? You're still going to check all your answer choices. Even if you just read 3 words of it, that's still reading an answer choice. I don't want you to ever read A, only pick that and move on. But the other way to reach a correct answer is to eliminate 4 wrong answers confidently, right? And then,
100%.
hey, this has to be right because I have 4 solid reasons why A through D is wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so and so Anonymous, maybe we've just given you two ways to approach if you are struggling with these. We shouldn't just say, oh, you're struggling with them, so practice more, right? We should probably also tell you, like, okay, so when you do practice them, here's 2 ways to approach them. One is try to line up your prediction with an answer choice. Like Beth just said, that's option 1, which is you know what you're looking for and you find that and you pick it. Obviously, you should also read the other answer choices just to make sure that they're bad. But then the other way to find the right answer, and this is, I would say oftentimes on parallel reasoning, you do kind of have to read all of them because they're all going to look visually very similar.
Right.
And they're all just going to have one word. Like sometimes they just go the wrong direction with the flaw, right? And so you're going to have to read them and eliminate 4 of them, and you're still gonna find your way home. It's just maybe going to take a little bit longer, but say la vie. But you're going to get better at these. You're going to get better at these as you get better at the test, as you get better at finding flaws, and as you get better at, like Beth was talking about, the reading comprehension that this whole exam is testing. Every question is testing that skill.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've talked a lot about parallel flaws, right? The other alternative to a parallel question is just a parallel reasoning question that's not flawed. Those are going to be more rare. So we have both of those questions that it'll say something like, which of the following most matches the flawed pattern of reasoning? That's one option. If you run into that question and you didn't notice that there was a flaw, my other advice for you is stop right there. Remember, the answer choices are not your friend. Your job is to stop and go back and find that flaw. Because
100%.
you will get very lost in the answer choices if you didn't realize that there was a flaw or you don't know what it is. Same is true for just a regular flaw question. You find that flaw before you get to the answer choices. So that's kind of like a check engine, right? Is do I know what the flaw is? Yes. Okay, I can proceed. The other alternative is if it's just one of those parallel questions that says which of the following matches the reasoning in the passage or something like that. Right. It doesn't say the word flawed. That doesn't mean it's not flawed. So if you spotted a flaw, if you're confident that they did something like, assumed causation from correlation, or they confused sufficient for necessary, you can go in knowing they didn't tell me there's a flaw, but I still know there's a flaw. Or it's really not flawed and it's a supported conclusion. And those can be really easy to knock out wrong answers because you're going to knock out answer choices that have flawed arguments instead. And you're going to choose an answer that has a good argument, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hate to say it, Anonymous and everyone listening, you can't get around the reading. You got to read the words. You got to read the words and you got to figure out, do they make sense or do they not make sense? That's the whole test. The whole test. Yeah. If you're trying to get around that, I don't know what to tell you. That's what we signed up for. So it's either going to be you're identifying flaws in the argument or you're identifying flaws in the answer choices. But the more you can flex that skill, the better you're going to get at it. The easier it's going to feel, the less exhausted you're going to be after even a parallel reasoning one where you have to read 5 of the same length blurbs. But it's the skill. It's the skill that we're working on. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's all of my reactions to it. The thing that I would just hit home again and again and just reminder again is that doing these questions and every question, not skipping any question, will help you on every single LR question. And you don't want to skip now because now is the time to put in the work. You're not going to just put off this question type until 3 months from now. You'll feel the same 3 months from now if you neglect these.
Right. And yeah, I mean, look, the horse is dead. We've been beating it for X amount of minutes, but like my last thought is exactly what you just said, Beth, which is, I think that this, and Anonymous is not the only student who feels this way, but this comes from the insecurity of not finishing the section. So they see the questions blank at the end and it makes them feel some type of way. And it's what we already talked about, which is the ones that you're struggling with, you kind of want to skip. But I think it's motivated by this desire to finish sections, or this like the time is in your head, right? The time is taking up so much of your brain space. And you think, if I skip some questions, I can finish the rest of the section without these. And then I would ask you, I think Beth and I would ask you, what are you doing? Your practice test score might look a little bit better, but it's a practice test. So who are you fooling? Not that you're trying to fool anybody, but you're kind of maybe just like putting a Band-Aid on the problem a little bit. Your scores are going to be climbing a little bit more maybe, but you're not learning the concepts that you need to be learning, and you're still not breaking the habit. Like Beth was saying earlier, one of the commandments, which is you're thinking about time. You're thinking about finishing the section. And that's something that we just think is counterproductive, because instead of thinking about the question you're on, you're thinking about how many questions you have left and how much time you have left. That's kind of where this question comes from is, I need to skip something in order to get to the other questions in order to finish more of the section on time. So maybe that's what we should have started with, which is, wait a second, that's not even a thing. But
yeah. I mean, hey, I used to try to fool myself with the questions that I would miss, and I would say, I knew it was really B. I'll get that next time. That did not serve me in the long run. I really had to get honest with myself on what I missed and get serious about the questions that I was missing. So That is our hope for you, because we want you to get better at the LSAT. You're asking this question, which is showing you want to get better at the LSAT too.
Absolutely.
And I think the only way out is through, right?
The only way out is through. Don't let yourself off the hook, Anonymous. Don't let yourself off the hook. Yeah. Right? We all do it. I was in the same boat. I would like rationalize why I picked the wrong answer. It's like, I just misread that. But if I would have read it right, I would have gotten it right. Well, yeah, Abhi, but you misread it. So that you made a mistake.
Yeah, you did the first thing wrong, which was the reading.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We all need to be a little bit better about not letting ourselves off the hook. Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, I think we've covered all there is to cover on this one, Beth. Unless you have any closing thoughts, we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. I do have one. If you miss a question, use the review features that are in the Demon. If you are a Demon subscriber, we have those text explanations. There are probably multiple videos of Ben and Nathan talking about the question in circles that you may have missed. And if neither of those click for you, use the ask button. So the asker here has used the ask button. That's where we pulled this question. So you are doing awesome to really get to the bottom of what's going on. But those resources are here for you. We want to help you understand it. If the explanations don't work or maybe something's off, let us know by the ask button too. So that will actually be my final.
That is such a good point. I think don't be afraid to miss the question too, right? I think maybe Anonymous is a little bit afraid to miss the question because they feel like they're not ready or they haven't done enough prep on this type of question. But how you get better at the question is by missing it and then reading the explanations, watching the videos, asking us questions, which you're doing. You're doing all this. I'm not picking on you. Yeah. I promise. Yeah. I'm not picking on this person. You're doing the right thing. This is just for everybody listening. Continue to use the resources, and you have our emails and you have the ask button. So keep working, keep trucking.
Yeah.
The only way out is through, as Beth said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. Well, if you all have any other questions, you can email daily@lsatdemon.com, or of course use the ask button if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. But thank you so much for listening.